the psychology of inflation.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Schwab. Schwab offers investors choices like full-service wealth management, self-directed investing options, and trading on Thinkorswim. More at schwab.com. And by UKG. UKG is a partner that delivers HR, pay, time, and culture solutions designed to help build a great workplace for everyone. UKG, our purpose is people.
From Marketplace, I'm Sabri Benishore, in for David Brancaccio. This is one of those weeks where we get answers to one of the economic questions of our time. How are we doing on inflation? On Wednesday, we'll get July's CPI, the Consumer Price Index. That's overall inflation. Tomorrow, we'll get inflation at the wholesale level. And later today, we get something more psychological. Consumer expectations of inflation, where people think inflation is going to be, as measured by the New York Fed. Those expectations have been cooling. People think a year from now, inflation will be at about 3%. 5 years from now, they expect it to be about 2.8%. Marketplace's Mitchell Hartman has more.
Inflation expectations signal how quickly consumers think the Fed might win its battle against inflation. But Robert Frick at Navy Federal Credit Union says when it comes to consumers spending their money, inflation expectations
don't matter at all. If you're trying to chart consumer spending based on inflation expectations, you might as well be looking at astrology.
It turns out when inflation's high, consumers don't rush out to make purchases to avoid paying higher prices later. Instead, Frick says, consumers spend primarily based on income, which is rising faster than prices right now. But consumers also spend based on how they feel about their personal finances, which is pretty mediocre, says Denny Coenemsi at Morning Consult.
Savings have dwindled and price levels are still taking its toll on the consumer.
Because they're so much higher than a few years ago and likely to stay that way. I'm Mitchell Hartman for Marketplace.
The two presidential campaigns are diverging on a key issue: how independent the Federal Reserve should be in setting monetary policy. The Fed's mission by law is to control inflation and promote employment. One of the big ways it does that is by influencing interest rates in the country. And former President Donald Trump last week said he would want to have a say on interest rate decisions. This weekend, the reactions poured in. Marketplace's Nova Safo has the details.
It was up to Republican VP candidate J.D. Vance to explain the former president's position when last week he said the Fed should consult presidents on interest rate decisions.
In my case, I made a lot of money. I was very successful, and I think I have a better instinct than, in many cases, people that would be on the Federal Reserve or the chairman.
On CNN's State of the Union, Vance acknowledged that this would be a big change, but he framed the issue broadly, saying political leaders should have more say on major decisions.
If the American people don't like our interest rate policy, they should elect somebody different to change that policy. Nothing should be above democratic debate in this country when it comes to the big questions confronting the United States.
But economists say an independent Federal Reserve has been a bulwark of America's economic might. Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris told reporters over the weekend that she would not interfere in the Fed's decision-making. Trump's stance also got pushback from Bank of America CEO Brian Moynihan, who appeared on CBS's Face the Nation.
If you look around the world's economies and you see where central banks are independent and operate freely, they tend to fare better than the ones that don't. And so I think that that's kind of the American way. It's been that way.
The Fed gets advice from lots of sources, he said, but should figure out monetary policy on its own. I'm Nova Safo for Marketplace.
All right, let's do the numbers. Dow, S&P, and NASDAQ futures are all up in the 1 to 0.3% range, with Dow futures up 30 points. 10-year Treasury yield is at 3.960%.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Progressive Insurance. On the road and at home, customers can simplify their insurance needs and protect what's important by bundling home and auto with Progressive Insurance. Learn more about Progressive and bundling at progressive.com. And by Amazon Business, focused on offering smart business buying solutions, leading time to focus on growth. More at amazonbusiness.com.
This week, the world's fourth most populous country is getting a brand new city. Indonesia will inaugurate the as-yet unfinished city of Nusantara, set to become the country's new capital, with a price tag of $33 billion. Another country relocating its capital, Egypt. The new planned city outside Cairo comes with an estimated cost of $59 billion. And in the past century, plenty of other governments have moved their capitals away from big congested cities, including Brazil, Nigeria, Pakistan, and Tanzania. Marketplace's Daniel Ackerman looked into some of the challenges involved.
Indonesia's current capital, Jakarta, has its share of hardships, says Deden Rukmana, an urban planner at UT Arlington. Like pollution, traffic, and maybe most concerning,
Jakarta is sinking.
Sinking thanks to sea level rise and excess groundwater pumping. But is building a shiny new capital from scratch 800 miles away really a good investment?
No, because who is going to go there and stay there?
That question, how to attract people and businesses, it plagues a lot of planned capitals, says Sarah Moser, a geographer at McGill University.
They're having population problems. Once you've moved civil servants and their families, it's really hard to get other people to move.
One exception, Moser says, is Brazil's capital, Brasilia, built in the 1950s.
The population exceeded its target before it was even finished because the construction workers brought their families and they all just sort of stayed.
Brasilia's metro population now tops 3.5 million. But in other planned capitals that haven't filled in as quickly, having the government move away from its people can be a liability. Felipe Campante, an economist at Johns Hopkins, has found that for more remote capital cities,
corruption increases and the quality of governance goes down.
Because Campante says there are just fewer people watching, whether they be protesters in the streets or journalists.
When the government is out there in some isolated capital, the big newspapers are not covering so much, and then you have corruption as a result of that.
Corruption aside, Sarah Moser of McGill says it's important to think about the opportunity costs of up and moving capital cities.
Citizens of Indonesia and Egypt need to question what resources are being diverted away from other things, like infrastructure upgrades, policing and security, public institutions within Jakarta or within Cairo.
Cities where millions of people are living right now. I'm Daniel Ackerman for Marketplace.
And in New York, I'm Sabri Benishore with the Marketplace Morning Report. From APM, American Public Media.